In this episode of Student of Life with Joe Hafner, we address the question, what do you want to be? Joe will examine the role your core values and purpose play in creating your vision, the specific steps you can take to develop a clear vision for your life and business, and much more. For show notes, links, and other resources, please visit studentoflifepodcast.com/5. That's studentoflifepodcast.com/5.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me for episode 5 of the Student of Life podcast. This is Joe Hafner. I can't believe that we've made it to episode 5. This podcast is for people who are seeking personal and professional fulfillment. And the first few episodes, we've been kind of digging into my philosophy on how you go about seeking fulfillment. As we're entering the 5th one, I think we've covered some big concepts, important concepts. And I want to do just a kind of a quick review of where we've been so we can get to work on where we're going, right? I believe fulfillment is when your core values and your purpose are in full alignment with each other. So naturally, core values and purpose would be two of the first things that we would cover. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about core values. And core values they answer the question, what do you believe? What are the things that you are so sure of in the world that nobody's going to change your mind on those things? And core values are something that are extremely important because they allow you to filter decisions. You run your decisions through those core values. It helps you make better decisions for your life. It helps you make better decisions for your business. It helps you determine that maybe a business decision that looks like a great idea really isn't a great idea, because when you look at how it translates with your core values, it just won't work out over time. You can go back and listen to all that, and that was podcast 3. And then from there, last week we went to purpose. And purpose answers the question, why were you created? What did God create you to do? What brings you joy? What are you great at? And of course with that, we went a little bit into what I call the utilitarian approach and the artistic approach of living out your purpose. So that's all important stuff where you need to spend the time figuring those things out. So when you take those two things together and you look, okay, what do I believe? Why was I born? What was I created to do? Then the next logical question for me at least is, what do I want to be? Who or what do I want to be? And that is my definition of vision. Who do you want to be? That's what we're going to talk about today. And it's really important, though, let me back up for a second and just say it's really important that you know what your core values are, that you know what your purpose is, because if you are filtering your vision through your core values and your purpose, you are much more likely to come up with a vision that will bring you fulfillment. If you're just coming up with a vision without thinking those other things through, you might be running 100 miles an hour in the complete wrong direction. Think about people in business who they're very driven by money, but they don't know why. And they're just running towards the next big thing, and they want all the expensive toys, and they have all those things, but they're never happy. They're never content. They never feel any satisfaction. It's just as soon as they get whatever it was they were going for, they're bored and they want something else. Is that the kind of life that you want? Yeah, it'd be great to be successful and make a lot of money, but wouldn't it be better to do something that brings you fulfillment, where when you're done with it, you feel a deep sense of accomplishment, you feel a sense of living out your purpose in the world? Doing the hard work of figuring out your core values and figuring out your purpose allows you to create a much more vibrant and satisfying vision, a fulfilling vision, really. So we're going to talk about creating that vision for your life and for your business today. I subscribe to the idea that you need a vision that's very clear, very detailed, that you can just really close your eyes and picture what it would look like. There's lots of different people have different definitions of vision, how you come about doing it. I want you to say, what are your dreams? What are your highest aspirations? Don't think small here. A lot of people who are not putting in the work to do this, you don't need to be around those people when you're coming up with your vision, because here's what happens. Someone who doesn't have the courage to put it out there themselves, a lot of them, they get satisfaction by tearing other people's dreams down. When you're coming up with your vision, you want to figure out, where can I have an impact on the world? Where do I want to focus my time and my energy that's going to have the biggest impact on other people and on bringing just a sense of fulfillment to my life, where I'm going to live out my core values and I'm going to live out the purpose that God created me for. This is what, if you've ever listened to Peter Diamandis, who's a huge thinker, this is what he calls your moonshot, right? So he's talking about, when he talks about a moonshot, he's talking about something that's a transformative change made in the world that's going to have an impact for many years to come. And of course, he's basing it on the original moonshot, which is in the early 1960s. John F. Kennedy came out with a big speech and said, we're going to send a man to the moon by the end of the decade. And he said, we don't do this because it's easy. We make this choice because it's hard. It's something that's worth doing that's hard to do. He didn't have a plan for getting there beyond saying, here's what we're going to do. He got all the best minds in the country to rally together to say, okay, here's this big idea. How are we going to get there? There are a lot of people who thought it wasn't possible when he made that pronouncement. I'm sure that there were a lot of people who were laughing at him when he made that pronouncement. And I would argue that if your vision doesn't make a few haters laugh, that you would think that you're someone who could do something like that your vision isn't big enough, your vision isn't bold enough. So let's talk about this for a little while. Let's talk about, how do you go about creating your vision for yourself? I have 7 steps. I like to have a numbered set of steps on how we do this. So some of these may overlap a little bit, but if you follow this plan, I believe you can create an incredible, vibrant vision for yourself. And like most of the stuff that leads to fulfillment, if fulfillment was easy, everybody would be satisfied, everyone would be contented, everybody would be fulfilled. But it's not easy. It takes the best you've got to figure out, to go through the steps to figure it out. So what I'm proposing here, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's worth the effort to do it. Those of you who have listened to the other 4 podcasts up to this point, I'm going to give you a second to guess. What do you think the first thing that we need to do in order to start working on your vision? I'll wait a second here. Maybe I'll play some Jeopardy music here if I can find it to put in the podcast. But if I don't find it, hold on one sec. Have you thought of it yet? All right. It's quiet time. You know that quiet time is one of the most valuable tools that we have. At least I know that. I know that if I don't have my quiet time, it's a mess. My day is a mess. My life is a mess. Have you ever lost a significant amount of weight in your life? Maybe lost 20, 30 pounds, and when you've lost it, you feel really good. And I know for me, I've lost weight before. And in fact, I'm going to talk about that whole journey in another podcast down the line somewhere. But when I've lost a large amount of weight, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I feel so good. And I didn't know how bad I felt until I felt so good from not having that extra weight I'm carrying around. Quiet time is the exact same thing. You don't know how good it is to have that regular, consistent quiet time until you have it when you didn't have it. It never ceases to amaze me how many successful people who have risen to a certain level spend all their time in noise and distraction and don't have that time to stop and think, and they have that brain spin going on all the time where problems are spinning through their heads and they can't think about anything else. And yeah, you can gut it out and work through that and play defense, and through force of will and extra hours and all that, kind of push your way through it and still be successful. But when you stop and you slow down and you study yourself and you study your situation and you think about things, how you're going to grow personally, how you're going to grow your business, when you stop and do those things, you get a chance to play offense. You get a chance to work on your business. In my business, I'm in real estate, and in my business, from the moment I walk in the door as the managing broker of a company, I have things flying at me, problems to solve, help people who need help, people who have questions for me. And if I didn't spend time in the morning working on the business so that I could go into the day with a plan to be on offense, to push my big rocks forward, I would spend my entire day in reaction mode, entirely on defense, responding to those people around me. putting all my time and energy into what's on fire instead of what's important. And that's what quiet time does for you. It gives you a chance to set your own agenda for your own success. It gives you an opportunity to work on your business or work on your life and be able to be on offense even when everything's going crazy all around you. Quiet time is hugely important in all the things that you do in your life, and if you're not spending time quietly contemplating your life, contemplating your business, coming up with plans. Just as an example, on days where my morning planning time is either cut short or for some reason I'm forced not to have it or I have to start earlier than I anticipated or whatever, when I walk in the door and I haven't had that time planning my day, my production level is zero. I might as well turn around and just go home when I walk in that way because the day attacks me instead of me attacking the day. So the first step in probably just about anything like this is quiet time. So once you have your quiet time, here's some of the things, when you're working on your vision, here's some of the things that you need to be thinking about during that quiet time. What do you want your life and your business to look like? What do you want to accomplish? What are your greatest goals in life? What do you want your life to stand for when it's all over? When you look back, what do you want people to say about you and who you were and what you did and what you accomplished and the people whose lives you touched? Who do you want to serve with your life? Do you want to serve yourself? Do you want to serve others? Do you want to serve the betterment of the world, the betterment of a group of people? These are important questions to ask yourself, because when you get to the end of your life, if you spent your whole life serving yourself, you're gonna feel pretty empty inside if you haven't spent time focusing on other people to serve. We're built to work with other people and to help other people. Working that into your vision, how you help other people and how you serve them, will make that a much more fulfilling process than not thinking about it and just seeing whatever comes your way. How do you want to serve those people that you choose to serve? What skills and talents and purpose, your purpose, who you are, what you were created to do, how do you apply that towards serving people? And you can serve them in your business, you can serve them working with a nonprofit, you can serve them creating a nonprofit. Whatever it is, find a way how you're going to serve, because when you serve people, you're going to be more fulfilled, because not only are you going to succeed, but you're going to help other people to succeed as well. So what do you want your day to look like? What problems do you want to solve? What kind of people do you want working for you and with you? I always, at this point, when you're thinking of your vision, one way to really get a feel for who you are and what you believe is to look at, Dan Sullivan has what he calls the 4 freedoms. These are the 4 areas where if you're seeking freedom in your life in these areas, we're all of us, to a certain extent, are seeking freedom in our lives. And these 4 freedoms cover pretty much everything. So they're freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationships, and freedom of purpose. So while you're having this quiet time, I want you to stop, slow down, and think about those 4 freedoms. And the way that I like to think about it when I'm working on this is, if I had unlimited time and I could do anything in the world I wanted to do, what would that be? And what you find is, when you really think about it, your first reaction, especially if you're overwhelmed and you're living amongst all the noise and distraction, your first thing's going to be, well, I just want to play golf all day, or I just want to have quiet, or I just want to go on a vacation and travel the world. But when you stop and you think and you really start playing that out, well, if I really did just travel all day, every day, would that really be fulfilling to me? Is that really in line with the purpose I was created for? Is that in line with what I really believe that I should, about myself and about the world? And when you think it through and drill down, you find out that if you have unlimited time, you'd be spending it in your purpose. You'd be spending it doing something that you believe God created you to do. So the second one is freedom of money. Freedom of money, same thing. If you had unlimited resources, what would you do with them? I know my wife, who is one of the most generous people I know, if she had unlimited resources, she'd be giving a lot of it away, helping people with it. So is that something that you would do at unlimited resources? Would you be pursuing some big idea? Like, we talked about Peter Diamandis earlier. He's in the middle of SpaceX, where he wants to create passenger service into space, right? Where people can take a rocket into space. That's a big idea that he's working on. What's your big idea is that if you had unlimited resources that you would go after? Then, of course, there's freedom of relationships. That's a little bit different than you don't have unlimited relationships. In fact, relationships take up a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of resources. So if you were free to associate with anybody you wanted to, who would those people be? Where would those relationships go? And I'm not just talking about your relationship with a spouse or your family. I'm talking about business relationships. I'm talking about the type of people that you want to surround yourself with. And I'll give you a great example of that. In real estate, when people first get into real estate and they're trying to build their business, they have to work with just about anybody that comes their way because they need to get their business established. And there's some people, and you see this a lot with brand new agents, they kind of attract the people that none of the other agents want to work with because they're either difficult people or mean people or people who are doing crazy stuff or don't listen to their agent, all those kinds of people. But when you have a level of success and you're able to have freedom of relationships, you can say, you know what, this person who I'm trying to help find a house to buy, he doesn't listen to any advice I give him. No matter what I tell him, he knows more than me. You know what? I don't have to work with him anymore. I can say, look, I love you. I think you're a great person, but our styles just don't work together, and move on to the next person and be free to not have to associate with that person in my business setting. That's what freedom of relationship is, choosing who you want to associate with and who you don't want to associate with. And then there's freedom of purpose, and I would argue that the other three freedoms create your freedom of purpose. If you've got freedom of time, freedom of money, and freedom of relationships, that opens the door for you to live out your purpose, and that's really where your vision comes into play. And if you look at all those things and you spend your quiet time working on them, you're going to discover what that vision needs to look like based on thinking through those four freedoms and what they'd look like in your life. So that's step 2. If we go to step 3 is you want to get everything down on paper in great detail. And I know some people, they're not writers, they don't think this way, but what you want to do is, if you need to, break it down into smaller chunks and work on it a little bit at a time. Think about, in my vision of what I want my life to be, of who I want to be, what I want to be, what does my morning look like? My typical morning. What does my typical afternoon look like? And each of these would be a different session, writing this out in great detail, with being really on top of things. Think of terms, don't just think in terms of what you see, think in terms of what you hear, what you smell, what you touch. Use all the senses to make it come alive to you. And then think about, what would my evening look like? What would my relationships look like? What would my vacation time look like? What would my work time look like? And just break it down in all the different ways you can think of. Get it all on paper, and then just keep working on that and put it aside for a little while. Come back to it. Look at it again. Add more detail. This is not something you do in an afternoon. This is something that, if it truly becomes a driving force in your life that you want to work towards, it's something that you spend really hours at a time working on. And then you put it aside and you come back to it. And over the course of months, or maybe even a year or two, you're creating this vivid vision of what you want your life to be. And when you write it in the present tense as if it's already happened, because when you're reviewing it on a regular basis, you need to just make sure that it's real to you as you're doing it. This is the thing that's going to drive you. When you create your goals to achieve this, believing you're on your way to this vision is what's going to push you and drive you when you don't feel like doing things. So that's number 3. Number 4, you want to go to your core values and filter this vision through your core values. Is your vision consistent with what you believe? As you read that vision, and over on the other side you have your core values written out, and you look at your core values and say, is this vision consistent with what my core values look like? If I live out these core values, another term I use for vision is core values realization, where if you're actually living out your core values, are you able to achieve this vision by living them? Or Are there values you don't have you need to add? I know some people, when they're early on in their lives, they're not hard workers, they're not grinders, they don't get after it and have that discipline. And that's something they have to learn how to do. And something like that's not bred into you. I know one of the fortunate things that my parents taught me is the value of working really hard. And because of that, I've always been kind of a driven person when I have a project that I'm passionate about. Other people I know have had to teach themselves that trait because they didn't have it. Well, guess what? If you have a fantastic, vivid vision of what you want to be in your life, that can give you the drive that you need. That can be the motivation that gets you to go after it when you don't feel like doing it. And it's something that you can develop, even though it's difficult to develop. But that's where your core values come into play. If you live out your core values, is this vision not only a possibility but a probability? And if it's not, you have to revisit. Do you have to adjust your vision so it fits your core values? Are you living out something in that vision that is in opposition to what your core values are? Well, now you've got a little bit of a crisis that you need to solve if that's the case. Or is there something missing from your core values like hard work? That if you don't have that it's a key component of achieving this vision, and if you don't have that in your core values, you need to add it and make sure that you are actively trying to live that out so that you can achieve that vision that you're going after. So those core values are really important, and that's why I say that you need to do the core values first before the vision, because then you go back and you use that to help shape and mold that vision. So now we have number 5, which is your why or your purpose. Why were you created, right? So you've got your detailed vision. Why do you want it? What purpose is it going, how is your purpose going to get you to that vision? How are your purpose and that vision in alignment with each other? If you remember last week when we talked about the utilitarian versus the artistic approach to vision or to purpose, the utilitarian is you're living out your purpose every day, and what you do, your vocation is your purpose, and you're living them out. And then there's the artistic approach where you're working hard so you can create the time and space and resources to do your purpose separately from your work. Well, which one are you doing, and how does that match your vision? Does your vision give you the ability to live out your purpose? I can tell you, if your vision does not give you the ability to live out your purpose, whether it's part of the work that you're doing or the work is creating the space to do the purpose, it's going to be unfulfilling when you get to it, because we are made by God to do certain things with our lives and with our skills and our talents and our experiences. And if you're not doing those things, you will not have the fulfillment that you're seeking. You really need to think about that why. You need to think about, why do I want this vision? Why am I going after this? What is the reason that I'm doing this? And all that comes together to help you come up with those reasons why you're going to push when you don't feel like it. Going back to the whole idea of, if I'm going to live out this vision, there's going to be times where I'm going to have to do things I don't want to. I'm going to have to do things when I don't feel like it. And if the vision is big enough and bold enough and clear enough and vivid enough, that's going to give you the fuel you need to push through those times when you're tired and you're exhausted and you can't think of doing anything else, right? And you don't want to do it. I heard a great analogy. Your vision, your vision is vivid enough when if someone were to wake you up out of a dead sleep at 3 a.m. and said, hey, it's time to do something that's going to move you closer to this vision. Let's go do it right now. And if you said, yeah, I'm up for that, and you jumped up and you went, then your vision is vivid enough because it's driving you no matter what. Whereas if you'd say, no, I'm going back to sleep, then you still need to work on your vision. It's a great way to think about it. So that's number 5. If we go to number 6 is where you take your vision and you turn it from just a dream into a goal. And that's where you create an action plan for yourself to start moving forward. Start at the end and work your way backwards. Start at the vision and say, what are the things that I would need to do to get to this, and work your way back to where you are right now. I was having a discussion with someone the other day about this whole idea of the first $1 million is the hardest to make. Because once you have resources like that, opportunities become a lot easier to come across. They become a lot easier to act on. But when you're sitting there struggling, trying to get to it, and you don't have the resources and you got to do everything yourself, it's much more difficult to get there. So if you're in a position where you have some huge vision that seems unattainable, and you're at a point where there's lots of things you've got to do yourself, you need to have the steps in place to work backwards from that. It's like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? And, of course, everybody knows the answer is one bite at a time. So if we're eating that elephant one bite at a time, you can't go from, like if you're, again, back to Peter Diamandis, you can't go from you're sitting there with nothing going on in your life to I'm going to send people into space. There's a whole progress, a whole set of steps that get you there. And by taking the time to think it through and back up to where you are and figuring out how do I take a step forward, and every day figuring out how you take a step forward towards making that vision reality, that's what you need to do with that action plan. And sometimes when you create that action plan, you're like, well, there's a big gap here. I don't know how I'm going to get past that. Well, you figure out, how do I get to the edge of the gap? And you work towards getting to the edge of the gap, and when you get to that edge of that gap, you figure out at that point how to get over it, or you enlist other people to help you. Or if you're working hard towards that vision, if you believe in God or you believe in the power of the universe or any of those things, you got to believe that as you're working towards that, the doors are going to open that are going to help you make that next step when the time is right for that next step. So that action plan is hugely, hugely important, and you want to be relentless in every day moving forward on that action plan to get that vision, to make it more and more of a reality every time you take a step. And then the last part about vision, the last step, step number 7, is that periodically you have to be ready to adjust the vision. I just heard a great presentation the other day about detours in our lives, and how very often whatever you're pursuing something and detours happen, things happen that are unexpected that take you in a totally new direction. Now, where I heard it was in the course of a sermon at church, and it's the whole idea that God knows what's best for you and is going to take you in the direction He wants you to go. I know that some people don't believe in that, and that's a whole nother discussion that I could have with you another time. But in life, the best laid plans go awry, and you end up going in a new direction. Back during the recession, I had certain plans and goals of where I was going to go, and I ended up going in a totally different direction than what I was planning. And you know what? The direction I ended up in is much better than the direction I was going in. So in life, as things change, as we have new experiences, as we have challenges and disappointments that strip things from us and give us new goals in life, that's where you got to go back to your vision and make sure, is that vision still in line with where you want to go? Is that vision still in line with things that will bring you fulfillment? Has your purpose, have you discovered a new offshoot of your purpose that takes you in a different direction? So you have to sit down and look at those things. Back in my 20s, my goals in life were very materialistic. I wanted a car, I wanted gadgets, I wanted a house, I wanted stuff. And after I went through, if you go back to podcast number 2 of this series and listen to it, it has a bit of my story of what happened during the recession. My goals changed. That materialism was stripped out of me by going through the recession. I learned that all those materialistic things I wanted weren't really that important to me. And other things are more important. Serving people is more important. Doing big things that change the world is more important. Having an impact on other people is more important. So because of that, if I were still pursuing the vision I had for myself in my 20s, I wouldn't be going after it very hard right now, because it's not what I want out of my life. It's not what will bring me fulfillment ultimately. And back in my 20s, had I achieved what I had set out to do, I probably wouldn't have had fulfillment. I would have been like those guys I talked about earlier who want the latest toy and the latest gadget, and they just want to, put their marks on the scoreboard and keep moving forward. And I would have been very dissatisfied with that. That would have been great for a minute or two when I achieved it, but I would have been dissatisfied with it ultimately. I think that periodically looking at that vision and adjusting it, and looking at the areas where, as you read through it, you say, oh man, that's really not me. cross that out and change it with something else, that's going to help you make sure that that vision remains in line with your core values, in line with your purpose, and ultimately becomes that fulfilling portion of your life, that vision, when you achieve it. To kind of wrap things up, take the time, if you haven't already, to sit down and figure out your core values. Go back to podcast 3, listen to all the info about core values, and take that quiet time and think it out and get them on paper. Figure out what you believe. Then take the time to sit down and figure out your purpose. Why did God create you? What is the reason that you're here on earth? What are you meant to do? And figure out how you're going to do that. Then take those two things together and come up with your vision for your life. Take the time to build this foundation, because it's going to give you a path to take in your life. So many people have a life where it's kind of aimless and rudderless. They're just kind of going from one day to the next. They spend their whole week looking forward to the weekend, their whole weekend looking forward to their vacation, their whole vacation looking forward to retirement, and their whole retirement waiting for death. If that's the life you want, have at it. That's not the life I want. And I'm sure for most people that's not the life they want. If you don't stretch yourself with these kinds of things, your comfort zone shrinks. Are you doing something every day to step outside of your comfort zone? Your comfort zone is going to shrink to the size of the lazy boy you're sitting in watching TV if you're not careful. These are things that I really believe strongly in, and I think that people's lives are much richer and more fulfilling when they do these things. So next time, I'm looking forward to meeting with you again next time. But before we go, I want to ask you a favor. If you're listening to Podcast 5 and you've heard all the others as well and you're enjoying this, I would love it. I would consider a personal favor if you would go to iTunes and give us a 5-star review and say nice things about us, because that helps us to get this podcast out to more people. Also, if you've been enjoying this and this has been helpful, I would just humbly ask you to share it with other people and ask them to listen as well. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have good things, or bad things for that matter, to say about it, I'd love for you to contact me. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me where you think I'm doing great. Tell me where you think I could use some help and some work. And, tell me what you would what you would like to hear me talk about on the podcast. And you can reach me by email at Joe, at studentoflifepodcast.com. That's Joe at studentoflifepodcast.com. Send me some email. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to Student of Life at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you go to for your favorite podcasts. Visit us online at studentoflifepodcast.com. That's studentoflifepodcast.com. We are on Facebook at Student of Life. Email us at joe@studentoflifepodcast.com. If you enjoyed the show, help us spread the word by telling someone you know about Student of Life. And please join us again next time. Thanks!